how early should you typically bolus before a meal? So, this is a good cue, and it's one that I sometimes fuck up on. So, typically, I think the very first thing is it depends for me. This might be the same for you. What time of day is it? What are you planning on doing? What are you eating? All of this kind of stuff. Because I'll tell you right now that I'm so much more insulin resistant in the morning, which means I need to give myself insulin farther in advance before eating. And I typically, for the mornings, I like to give myself insulin about 30 minutes before my first meal. And I usually get up around 7. Maybe I'll eat breakfast around 8 or 9. And it's really, really important that I try to remember to give myself insulin 30 minutes before. Because otherwise, I struggle with going up a little bit with high blood sugar. And for the rest of the day, because it's really just mornings that I'm more insulin resistant, and even depending on what I'm eating too, I will actually give myself insulin 30 minutes before. I will either start eating and then in the middle of my meal, give myself a small bolus, or wait until after and then give myself another small bolus to kind of help that curb that increase in sugars depending on what I'm eating. Right now, I feel like I go through phases, but right now I'm eating oatmeal with a scoop of protein powder in it. Now, for the rest of the day, I try to typically give myself insulin 15 minutes before. In the evenings, I am the most insulin sensitive. Sometimes I will actually give myself insulin depending on what I'm eating again. This is also more so because my dinner has fewer carbs than my breakfast and my lunch. And so since I eat fewer carbs in the evening, sometimes I'll actually give myself my insulin in the middle of my meal or just after. So that's what helps me. But it really, I think, you just need to know when are you most insulin resistant and then kind of play around with the timing for that. But this is what works for me. And I will just go through a quick list here of popular insulin and the duration, the peak, the onset for the insulin, because it's so easy to forget. Like, you are trying to remember a million things every single day, and then it just sometimes you're hungry and you sit down and you're like, shit, I totally forgot to give myself insulin, and it happens. So typically though, for FIOSP, the onset is 2 to 15 minutes. Peak is 0.25 hours to 2 hours. Duration is 2 to 5 hours. For Humalog, Admelog, Novolog, NovoRapid, and Apidra, 10 to 30 minutes is the onset. The peak is half an hour to 1.5 hours, and then the duration is 3 to 5 hours. And then for R, regular insulin, do you remember R? I don't know if you've taken it before. If you are taking it, I'm sorry, but when I was first diagnosed, R was my fast-acting insulin, and so the onset for that, I remember it would take forever before I could eat. Like, I'd be starving. But the onset is 30 to 60 minutes before a meal. The peak is 2 to 5 hours, and then the duration is 5 to 8 hours. So I'm sure it works for some people, but I just remember that at the beginning of my diagnosis. So yeah, this is typically what works for me. I hope this quick tip episode is helpful to you as well. And it takes some trial and error and some playing around with, but generally 30 minutes does the trick for my mornings and 15 minutes for the rest of the day. So if this episode is helpful for you today, please do share it with a friend and be sure to subscribe, because that way you won't miss out on future episodes and bonus content. Talk to you very soon. Bye for now.